you guys like some updates on the Beretta here? So I haven't got as much done as I wanted, like always. Don't get Lyme disease. It sucks. And it will kick your ass for a while. And then COVID, and then pneumonia. Good times. I did get the dash put in here. I got my clearance cut. So now I have clutch master and brake master cylinders in there. Pedals are all set. See all three of them there. Got some more work to do with the floor itself. My old man had this parts car CUDA garbage, and I cut out the tunnel and the bell housing area here. Some of it's pretty damn ugly, but it'll be a start as far as getting the Beretta closed up. I did some trimming on the console here. I hacked off probably 3 or 4 inches of it, something like that. And it's still really too tight with this dash in here. So I'm going to have to actually cut this bottom part of the dash out completely, which is going to kind of suck because the trim piece clips in here and up here. And with just the 2 top ones, I'm going to have to figure out how I keep it together down here. Maybe a magnet or something like that. Okay, cut some clearance for those master cylinders. So now the reservoirs fit right on top of the master. Alright, that was some work, but I'm getting rid of the sloppiness of this rag joint here. I didn't like how that was. So these are going to go directly together, nice and solid. Okay, so here's this rag joint all done. I ended up using the 5/16 bolt, and then I drilled and tapped this one for 3/8 because there's not much clearance to that pinch bolt there either. But I think that'll work decent. I end up throwing a tack on here too. Once I've got this all mocked up and know that it's going to work fine, I'll probably hit this with some nickel wire and bolt and weld it, make sure it's all good. And I finished another firewall plate out of steel here so I can get that. I'm hoping that with that rag joint eliminated completely, and then my steel plate up here instead of that plastic one I was mocking up with, that I'll get rid of all that play and it'll feel a lot better for the steering. Alright, I got the steering shaft all done. There's my used to be rag joint, which is now a solid coupler, single U joint, and single U joint. So what I'm going to do now is figure out my steering angle itself to see what I got to do for the steering arm back in here as far as changing geometry. When I had it on the lift, it looked like I had reverse Ackermann, and so I'm going to have to change the steering arm. I made this little gauge at work to be able to figure out how many degrees of steering I've got in both directions. I've got the tires moving, not the gauge. That's what I wanted. Alright, let's try this again. I got 5 PSI in the tire. No, that's really annoying. Alright, I ain't dicking around now. Using an adhesive here, and we're going to make sure that this thing works. Spin that thing around. There we go. Let's try this again. Inner turn. $20 degrees. $23, I would say. So that's less steering angle than like a factory Camaro, which the drift guys say have a terrible steering angle from the factory. I would like to be somewhere in the 45-degree range. So I'm about halfway there, which means I'll have to take the distance from the ball joint to the steering arm and cut it in half to get my 45 degrees of steering angle. That's not ideal because I've already got that steering rack about as far back as I can get it with the engine, so I'd have to move this ball joint forward, which would give me more caster. That would be a good thing. Have to move that ball joint forward in order to keep the angle on the tie rod from getting crazy if I cut that distance in half. And it seems like the angle on this upper U joint is a little, ooh, I was going to say it feels a little notchy, but apparently that set screw came loose. That's probably where my notchiness is. I'll bet that fixes it. Sweet! Oh, hell yes. The steering feels way better. Fixes aren't usually that easy. I'll take it. All right, well, glue trick definitely worked. So when I make my modifications to the steering arms, I know what I'll need to do to get an accurate gauge measurement. Wow, that's on there good. I brought some stuff home to the old garage so I can make Beretta progress at home at night, not just on the weekends. All right, I did some math on these steering arms here. It was a total of 5 3/4 from here to here. So to cut that in half and get me my like 45 degrees of steering angle, this is where I need to be for the whole. And then this is like 30 degrees of steering angle, which is what a factory Camaro runs. So what I'm going to do, I'm cutting this and moving it back 1.5 inches is what it ends up being, to move this hole back to like 30 degrees, wherever that lines up here, because this is going to come off and then come back here. And this is also, so this is where it bolts onto the spindle right here. I'm taking this and also putting it on the same plane as the bolt on here, which is going to help my Ackermann. And what I'll end up with is an ability to put it at 30 degrees or 45 degrees and correct the Ackermann at the same time. Okay, so here's where my geometry is about right. And I should have given this a little more room and cut it back here and let this come all the way to here to get some more weld on it. I'll do the other one that way. Maybe I'll buy another pair of these and modify them. I'm not sure yet. More changes, imagine that. This steering has been the biggest pain in the dick of the whole project. Wow, look how much the toe changed here by changing the angle of that bracket. So when I brought it back, then I have the hypotenuse instead of coming straight back. That's how much the toe changed. I got this about zeroed up. Let's see what we get for angle. Okay, now I eyeballed toe for the sake of mock-up. That's reasonably decent. This geometry in here is horrible. So really ought to bring that ball joint forward if I do end up doing this much steering angle. I was curious, this should be like 45 degrees if my math is right, and then this one 30. We'll see what we actually get on the measurement. All right, now we're within 1 degree of 0. Seeing 34. And now I'm hitting the wheel well, I think. Feels like there is more in there. Yep. So I'm hitting the wheel well. Okay, this angle looks really good. I like that. Problem is I'm hitting the inner here, right there. Okay, the tie rod geometry looks a little less bad with the other hole, the outboard hole, which is supposed to be 30 degrees, but I'm not sure. I'm going to measure now. So even after changing the steering arm setup, it's still negative Ackermann. I'm going to roll with it for now because I want to drive that thing. It will require some fixing. The best idea I have is a steering rack that has more throw than that Camaro rack, and that way I can move the steering arms further ahead again, get my geometry better, because I think the issue is rather than being straight in line, as it turns, it gets a more severe angle here, and that shortens the distance, which messes with the Ackermann. So I think that's my root issue. I'm going to have to do some homework and find out what's got a front steering rack with a decent amount of throw. I'm going to measure the throw on the Camaro one, see what that is, get some comparisons, and then cut the Camaro stuff out, weld in the new rack, whatever it is, which is going to mean a new steering shaft too. But that's the best option I can think of to fix it, because to move the ball joint forward enough for that to work better, it's going to make the wheelbase longer. I can't. So to move the ball joint forward would help with that steering, but the problem is, in order to move the strut mount in the top back far enough to keep the wheels centered, I'd have to move it like 10 inches, and that's not going to work. So if any of you guys watching has an idea, I'm all ears. I would love something easier than tearing out that whole steering rack. Let me know what you think.